Thank you very much. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester. I'm leader of Herefordshire Council and I'll be chairing the meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, we have councillors joining us remotely in the meeting. So I'll now check them that they can see us and hear us and we can see and hear them. So in no particular order, Councillor Harvey.
Oh yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome, Councillor Fagan.
Yes, good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for attending. And last but not least, Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. And on this very auspicious day when Robbie Burns was born, all those years ago, I can hear and see you.
Excellent. And Councillor Stark, can I draw your attention to Councillor Stoddard's tie?
Well, you could if I could see it.
Oh, right, okay.
Hello, look, there you go, Louis. Good Stuart Starton.
Stuart Starton, for anyone who didn't catch that. Right, okay. That's enough of that frivolity. Right, okay, but excellent point. Important day, culturally. Okay, so yes, so we also have group leaders in the room, Councillor Chowns and Councillor Matthews. Councillor James has sent his apologies, but we're expecting Councillor Owens in his place, so expect that. So we have full cabinet and scrutiny chairpersons who can make contributions to the meeting where appropriate, and we have a number of officers in attendance who will be introduced if they're called upon. So I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council's YouTube channel and making a recording. Please note that a new system has been installed and your patience is appreciated if we encounter any technical difficulties. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Only one microphone will be able to be used at a time, and a flashing green when you're waiting to speak and flashing red when you are speaking. If you have an issue with your microphone, please let the clerk know who can allocate a new microphone to you. Please ensure that all your devices are set on silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record the public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any members of the public attending do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please notify a member of staff. So as we move through the agenda, in addition to the discussion by cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives to indicate if they wish to provide any views and raise questions from their group on each item, and where appropriate, we will call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Each group leader can speak once on each item. Voting will be taken by a show of hands in the room, and only cabinet members who are present will be able to vote, but all cabinet members are present today. One opening remark I would say is that one of the main items on the agenda for the budget is recommendations about how we propose to allocate the extra funding that the government has made as part of the local government settlement, and part of the allocation was determined only within the last 24 hours as a result of the government giving further clarification on further funding for the local government settlement. So the government has allocated more sums to Herefordshire Council, and that will form part of the discussion of Cabinet today. And because there's an amendment to the recommendations on this item, we will be providing that documentation on the screens and for people to see that as we discuss it and put it forward as a recommendation for the council for the 9th of February. So have we any apologies from the clerk? Can I just clarify, apart from Councillor James, which has already been noted?
No, none.
Okay, thank you. The next item is item 2, which is declaration of interests. Are there any table A or table B or any other interests for items on the agenda today? No? Okay, thank you. So we have agenda item 3, which is minutes of the previous meetings, which were the 14th and 21st of December 2023. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes of the 14th and 21st of December are accurate records and should be signed? Yep. Okay, thank you. So agenda item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received four questions for this meeting, and responses have been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or attend the meeting to ask a supplementary question live. Supplementary questions can be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if we've had any supplementary questions.
We've had one supplementary question from Herefordshire Construction Industry Group, which I'll just bring up on screen now and read out on their behalf. So sorry, I'll just make that bigger. If it will let me. There we go. So the supplementary question is, thank you. Unfortunately, this doesn't answer the question. Credits remain elusive and glacial. We worry that Herefordshire Council controls all aspects of mitigation. What is done, who gets credits, when and how much they cost. Powys and Monmouthshire County Council plan to use Welsh Water's upgrades as mitigation. Following Amendment NC 77 to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, all other English counties will do the same. As an English county with a Welsh operator, Herefordshire is excluded, so is significantly disadvantaged, despite new housing needing so little mitigation. Could Herefordshire Council seek legal and government advice regarding Welsh water mitigation capacity? Would Herefordshire Council meet with HCILG to discuss the situation in more detail so we can better understand and help one another? We desperately need urgent support, and presumably the council needs the money, homes and jobs that HCILG generate.
And that question is directed to Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Ms Albright and the Herefordshire Construction Industry Lobby Group for the supplementary question. I'm really sorry that they feel that the credit allocation process is glacial. The planning team is working hard to deliver mitigation for schemes that have been on hold for longest on a first in, first out basis. Close to 600 houses have been released so far. As soon as we're able to commence the project planning for the additional mitigation measures outlined in our original response, then I'm assured we will have sufficient mitigation in place for development beyond 2030. With respect to the approach adopted by our neighbours in Wales, our understanding is that funding had been secured by Monmouthshire Council in addition to the requirements of AMP8 to upgrade wastewater treatment works at 2 sites in Monmouth and Llanfoist, and this has enabled further development linked to these works to be permitted. In Herefordshire, we've launched the Environmental Advice Service, which allows developers to propose their own private mitigation schemes, and this would then be included as part of their development agreements, which means that the council is not going to be the sole provider of credit allocations going forward. Herefordshire Council recognises that the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act seeks to address the issue of growth through applying further funding to upgrade wastewater treatment works across the country, but that Herefordshire is at a particular disadvantage in this respect. We drew this to the attention of Therese Coffey, the former Environment Minister, during her visit to the county, and an action plan specific to the River Wye was proposed. In the light of the change of minister, the council will be making further representation to government to once again highlight this issue. I am, of course, more than happy to meet with Ms Albright and the Construction Industry Lobby Group to further discuss this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we, just to confirm, have we got any more supplementary questions?
Not that I've been notified.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is to receive any questions from councillors of Herefordshire Council, and we've not received any questions from any councillor. So we move on to agenda item 6, which is reports from scrutiny committees. So we have 2 committees that have met recently. One is the Scrutiny Management Board regarding the 24-25 budget, and that's on page 3 of the first supplementary pack, and all members of Cabinet have had a chance to have sight of them, so thank you very much. And we will no doubt take note of those when we are discussing the item next. But as is customary, I will ask Councillor Harvey to comment on the work of the Scrutiny Management Board, and also there was a meeting of the Children and Young People Directorate Task and Finish Group, and Councillor Fagan has been working on that. So if she would like to, I would invite her to make some comments as well. But we'll go over to Councillor Harvey first. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Scrutiny Management Board met on the 10th and the 16th of January to conduct the scrutiny of the administration's draft budget as required by the Council's constitution. No alternative budgets were submitted by other political groups for scrutiny, and no amendments were proposed to the draft budget papers produced for these meetings. The draft budget scrutinised was the one approved by Cabinet back in December, prior to the provisional settlement detail being released by central government, and the committee was not provided with information contained in today's Cabinet papers regarding how the administration proposes to apportion the £2.5 million of funds which that settlement confirmed. The proposed use of these funds in today's Cabinet papers therefore falls outside of the consideration given by scrutiny. This is disappointing, as it would have been possible for these sums to be included in the scrutiny process, even if the additional settlement sums mentioned by the leader in his introduction just now were not known at the time. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank members of the committee and Cabinet members and officers for their assistance throughout the scrutiny process. There's a huge amount of work involved in producing a budget for the council and all the papers to support it. And on the face of it, the budget balances. But examination of the detail raises a number of areas of concern which the scrutiny process has highlighted, which I'd like to take a few minutes to give an overview on, so as to place the recommendations of the committee in context. Significant time was given to the scrutinising of plans for delivering community wellbeing and children and young people's services, which account for nearly 70% of the council's total base budget, and particular attention was paid to the savings proposals across these directorates and to their plans for delivery. In the in-year delivery and budget proposals for the Children's Directorate were considered in detail by Task and Finish Group, which reported on Tuesday of this week to the Children's Scrutiny Committee. The 2024 budget proposes to provide a nearly £11 million uplift in this directorate's base budget, making the argument that the directorate has a structural budget deficit and that this correction will enable the directorate to operate from now on within its revised budget envelope and to do so in future years without further budget increases. However, the budget for the coming year, which requires both savings and service pressures to be managed, is slightly less than the forecast outturn for the directorate for the current financial year, when, even so, no savings at all have been delivered and none are presently being forecast. This lack of track record calls into question the reality of the balance of next year's budget for the whole council. As regards savings, the committee makes 3 recommendations: that, without evidence demonstrating in-year delivery of savings in the Children's Directorate, it is not sound to rely on this directorate delivering £2.5 million worth of savings in order to balance the council's budget, and therefore either firm evidence of savings delivery in this financial year needs to be produced, or an alternative source of savings needs to be identified. Also, that the detail is provided on how 450k of savings proposed to be taken from the Balfour BT Living Places annual maintenance plan. The detail of how these are to be achieved needs to be produced, and what service areas will be impacted. And the third one is, due to the concern over the potential impact of making £4.5 million worth of savings through encouraging staff to resign from the council, that there is an ongoing monitoring of performance in areas where these MERS savings are taken for the 2024-25 financial year. Income and fees are highlighted in the budget papers as becoming increasingly important in making additional local contributions to the funding of services, with car parking charges being particularly important in delivering over £5 million per year towards the cost of maintaining roads and transport services. As regards income, the committee makes 2 recommendations to be addressed before this budget is submitted to full council. That the detail of the income built into the budget is provided for all services in each directorate, and that evidence is provided to give assurance that the income targets being placed on planning services are realistic. Assumptions and risks identified in the medium-term financial strategy were tested and mostly were found to be reasonable and prudent. It was noted that the MTFS manages to come in within almost £2 million of balancing across its 4-year period, but that this is down almost entirely to the planning assumptions that introduce double council tax for second homes, and that this additional income stream will deliver more than £19 million over the plan period. Without this level of new income, there would be a significant hole in the council's future finances, and there is no fallback source for this funding if the income projections prove overly ambitious. Treasury management practice and plans were similarly tested. The council continues to take a particularly prudent approach to its investments and a cautious approach to its level of borrowing, although it is pulling forward borrowing from future years in order to jumpstart capital investment projects. This is not considered to be unsound, but the impact of this over time on the council's ability to make new investments in future years does need further consideration. The committee noted that the in-year overspend in the Children's Directorate is proposed to be funded by taking £13.8 million from the council's earmarked reserves. However, the detail of which reserves will be reduced and what the risk and impact of doing this will be is not provided in the budget papers. Consequently, the committee recommends that the administration provides a forecast of which earmarked and general reserve lines they expect to take funds from in order to deliver the required 13.8 million to cover the overspend forecast made at Q2 in children's services. The committee notes that the administration is proposing to increase council tax by the maximum allowed 4.99% by raising general council tax by 2.99% and accepting the ring-fenced 2% additional council tax to support adult social care. To offset the impact of this rise on those least able to pay, the council, the committee was advised, is continuing in its policy to provide 100% council tax discount to qualifying households. And in addition, the committee was assured that the level of funding being provided to make targeted support available to hard-up households is at least being maintained at this year's level of £1.7 million. However, this fact is not made clear in the budget papers this year, and therefore the committee recommends that the investment being made in targeted support to hard-up households is made clear in the budget papers for full council, and where the money's coming from to realise that. This concludes the recommendations from the Scrutiny Management Board, and I do hope the administration will give them serious consideration and will respond positively to them in good time for the budget papers to come to full council on the 9th of February. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, and thank you to you and the Scrutiny Committee and the work that was done with the Children's Scrutiny Committee as well, and the individual meetings that were had that led up to supporting the main meetings. Really appreciate that and everyone's contribution. The one question I have, though, Councillor Harvey, for you is, I seem to recall a recommendation, because there was discussion about a document called the local account. Because if we recall, Councillor Crockett was saying, how can we be sure that the adult social care budget is being delivered when it comes to care? And that was mentioned in the meeting. And I'd made the point, that sounds like a great idea. And the document is called the local account, and it goes into detail about how services are delivered. And the last one we did, I'm informed, was 2017. And I thought the meeting had thought that that was a good idea to reintroduce that. But I'm just a bit surprised that that didn't come forward as a recommendation. So I don't know what your thinking is on that.
Well, what we did was try and comb out the difference between recommendations that we felt needed to come forward to inform Cabinet's decision on the budget, and actions that we would be proposing to be undertaken on a longer timescale. So the actions are going to be captured in the minutes of the meeting, but we tried to hone down the recommendations just to those specifically relating to the budget papers.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for that clarification. I just thought it was a really important point that was teased out of the meeting, and I just double checking that it wasn't missed off because of the recollection. But thank you for that clarification. Okay, so Cabinets have these recommendations before us, and we will give them due consideration, as has been said. And then part of the scrutiny process as well was also from the presented to the Children and Young People's Scrutiny meeting. So, Councillor Fagan, over to you.
Thank you, Leader, and I'd very much like to thank the members of the Scrutiny Management Board that actually undertook the task and finish to look at the Children and Young People Directorate budget. So that included Councillor Harvey, who obviously has a very good handle on the budget, Councillor Crockett, Stark, Highfield and Thomas. And they produced an excellent report which looked at the factors which were driving the overspend in the Children and Young People's Directorate. A lot of them we hear a lot about, but and how difficult it is, and how difficult it is on a national picture in terms of placements, rising costs for look after children who need residential care, and the extraordinary sort of profiteering that happens within parts of that sector, which drives up costs, and for those that also need sort of more complex care needs. So a very difficult area. They looked at recruitment and retention of staff, which is one of the key areas in sort of the 3-year plan to get the directorate back on track, and the increased demands on services from the young people within the county. A huge part of that was the growing transport costs for special educational needs, which has become again another national issue, but has impacted Herefordshire quite to a large extent as well, and impacted the budget. And then also looking at the failure to deliver the agreed savings in this financial year 2023 to 24. So obviously Councillor Harvey has alluded to the 2.5 million savings which are at risk because there's no evidence to prove that they can be achieved because of the failure to achieve any of the savings this year. And I think that was, one of the concerns that Councillor Harvey has already referred to. Basically, the Task and Finish group sort of welcomed the savings, but they didn't feel that they should be relied upon to deliver a balanced budget, and that possibly funding should be assured from elsewhere to balance the council's budget, and then a repayment made back to that area once those savings could be achieved. So that was the key recommendation to Cabinet from this Task and Finish group. There were other recommendations from this group which fell back on the Children's Scrutiny Committee and will determine the programme of work going ahead for the next year. And then there were also certain recommendations to the service in terms of data and making sure that financial performance data was reported back to staff teams, that we looked at that dedicated financial resource continued to be embedded in the directorate to provide challenge and assurance, and then making sure that the Children and Young People's Committee is provided with information on the chat. So there were various elements that came back to the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, which we will certainly be looking at, but primarily this one for Cabinet was about the 2.5 million savings and the concern that would not be deliverable and could threaten a balanced budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fagan, and thank you for all of the work that went behind that. It's much appreciated. Right, okay, so we will move on now to agenda item 7, which is the budget, medium-term financial and treasury management strategies, the revenue budget for the Cabinet has come up with, and that will form the recommendation that will go to full council, which will be debated on the 9th of February. But I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Stoddart, who's the Cabinet Member for Finance, who will announce the item and take us through the item, and I look forward to your contribution. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. When I introduced the 2024-25 draft revenue budget to Cabinet on the 14th of December, I mentioned that it was a draft budget and that we would be consulting widely with council members, council scrutiny committees, local businesses and the public. I can now report back that a total of 13 locality-specific consultation events were undertaken in each market town. Additional targeted consultation was also undertaken with specific sections as a community: young people at Hereford Sixth Form College and a young farmers event, businesses at a Hereford Means Business Hereford Means Business Conference, older people attending the 50+ Christmas lunch at the Kindle Centre, and families attending the holidays, activities and food Christmas event. Approximately 652 people were engaged across the 13 events, and a further 326 participated through the online survey. This is a significant increase in the numbers previously recorded, and we've also spoken with many other council members and provided additional information to the Scrutiny Management Board in 2 separate meetings earlier this month in January. The draft revenue budget that I presented to you on the 14th of December was based on our estimated funding from the central government settlement. I'm very pleased to announce today that the government settlement was better than expected to the sum of £2.5 million, which is made up of £824,000 from the new homes bonus and £1.7 million from other movements in grants and core funding. Furthermore, following direct engagement of the County Council Network, the Local Government Authority, the Rural Services Network, a number of large County Council CEs and a number of MPs, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities have reviewed the recent settlement, and yesterday afternoon announced an increase in the Rural Services Delivery Grant and Social Care Grant for adults and children. This is estimated to be worth an additional £945,000 for the Rural Services Delivery Grant and social care grant of 1.835 million for the social care grant for Herefordshire. The revised budget for 2024-25 is now £210.5 million. As I mentioned on the 14th of December, if the central government settlement was higher than estimated, then we would look at what we would do with these additional funds. This Conservative-led administration has shown before that we listen to the people of Herefordshire, and the consultations that have taken place and following discussions with fellow councillors, I'm able to state today that the planned increase in the general parking increase element, the car parking charge increase, that was an action from the previous administration, will now be cancelled at a cost of £400,000. In the debate on the 8th of December, the leader mentioned that strategic housing was and remained a priority for this administration. As part of the government settlement, I mentioned earlier, we received £824,000 from the new housing bonus, which this administration will increase to £1 million, and that will be allocated in support of strategic housing activities. The Leominster Heritage Action Zone, which received government funding in 2019, however, due to dithering by the previous administration, did not commence work until last year when the cost had increased and has subsequently paused. It's this administration's intention to level up across the county, and in demonstration of this, we'll now allocate £300,000 to make up this shortfall and enable this vital project to go ahead and support the residents of Leominster. Following consultations with council colleagues, we'll also remove the planned reduction of library opening hours by 10% at a cost of £55,000. We'll also support the Economy and Environment Directorate through the provision of funding officer resource to support external funding opportunities at a cost of up to £56,000, together with £200,000 support for the community and volunteer sector. We're very aware of the important part of our life that parish councils play, and we understand that they have set their Lensman scheme of work for the next financial year based on the value of the Lensman scheme that they received last year. However, that figure was higher than the budgeted figure of £60 per kilometre due to a rollover of the previous year's funding. To enable parish councils to meet their planned schemes of work and carry out that essential work that they do, we will now allocate an additional £250,000 in support of the Lensman scheme for this year. We have also heard the comments from parish councils, walkers groups and Councillor Fagan at Scrutiny Management Board on the 16th regarding the current condition of the public rights of way network across the county. Having listened to these comments, we will now allocate £250,000 to address those elements that are keeping the footpaths across Herefordshire closed. The aim being to open all 2,000 kilometres of footpaths across the county in support of tourism. The recent weather has had an adverse effect on the condition of the road network due to poor drainage, and again, listening to the parish council's concerns across the county, we will now allocate £445,000 to address drainage works across the road network. These three last items will be funded from the additional rural services grant that was announced yesterday. And finally, we'll allocate approximately £500,000, £500,000 to the Financial Resilience Reserve and £1.835 million from the Social Care Grant to a new Social Care Resilience Reserve, thus beginning the process of rebuilding our reserves. This draft revenue budget totals £210.5 million for 24-25 and includes a 4.99% increase in council tax. We are very aware that there are a number of residents who will struggle with this increase, and later in this meeting I'll bring forward a proposal in regards to continuing the council tax reduction. The draft revenue budget proposed for each directorate is shown at paragraph 16 of the report and is detailed at Appendix B. I would like to remind all my Cabinet colleagues that the moratorium on expenditure above £500, together with the linked expenditure control panel which is in place this year, will be extended into financial year 24-25 and will be a key driver in monitoring spending and, together with other mechanisms, delivering the planned budget. The table at paragraph 17 shows a summary of the unfunded pressures of £43.3 million by directorate. It is proposed that the £4 million all ages social care budget approved in the 2023-24 budget is applied to the Community Wellbeing Directorate in 2024-25 to fund demand and cost pressures in adult social care. Each directorate has key budget pressures. Within community wellbeing, the directorate faces continued challenges as a result of increasing demand and complexity of need for the county's ageing population, limited market availability, and the impact of hospital high occupancy rates, together with an increase in the number of individuals unable to fund their own care linked to the cost of living crisis and inflation. Within Children and Young People's Directorate, unprecedented increases in the demand for children's social care have had a significant impact on children's services nationally. Insufficiency of local residential placement, growing demand in special educational needs and home-to-school transport services, together with national challenges in the recruitment and retention of social workers, continue to contribute to the pressures across the Directorate. In 2024-25, the savings proposals through the 3-year financial plan, which supports the Children's Improvement Plan, place workforce stability and the reduction of high-cost placements as key for the Directorate to ensure that it lives within its means after 3 years. The table at paragraph 26 of the report shows how savings planned over that 3-year period will enable a reduction of the base budget by 31 March 2027 and will ensure that the Directorate is able to deliver recurrent savings over a 3-year period. And furthermore, we have provided significant evidence and information to the Children's Task and Finish group that was mentioned by the leader earlier. Economy and Environment will see the removal of the previous administration's planned increase in parking charges. Investment in the Directorate will provide sufficient resource and capacity to support growth in the economy in 2024-25 and beyond, with additional one-off funding to ensure that the local plan can be delivered in the next 12 months and to provide resources and expertise to support the future operating model and contractual arrangements with Balfour Beatty Living Places. Corporate Services will deliver their savings through a review of services, business support functions across the council and a review of the management structure. Total savings of £19.5 million are proposed in this 2024-25 draft budget, comprising of £11.6 million of Directorate savings and a further £7.9 million of council-wide savings. These savings include a range of proposals to transform the delivery of services, increase opportunities to recover the costs of service delivery, and to deliver recurrent efficiencies. As part of the transform area, the council-wide savings of £7.915 million includes £4.5 million to be achieved by MERS, which will see council volunteers voluntarily take early resignation. The details of the individual proposals and a description of the planned activities for Directorate savings of £11.6 million are detailed in Appendix B and were subject to the detailed review at the Scrutiny Management Board. The medium-term financial strategy is the Council's key financial planning document and sets out the Council's budget for 24-25 and the financial plan for the next 3 years out to 2027-28. Table 1 shows a cumulative funding gap of £1.9 million over the medium-term financial period. This is a significantly better position from the MTFS that we inherited from the previous administration that showed a cumulative gap of £15.8 million over the same 4-year period. Whilst there are significant challenges ahead, this MTFS ensures that the Council's finances are aligned to its strategic priorities with a clear focus on transformation to ensure the financial stability of the Council and the services that it delivers. The Treasury Management Strategy at Appendix D has been prepared to comply with the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities statutory guidance for local government investments, dated 2018. That statutory guidance on minimum revenue provision 2018 and the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy CIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance and Local Authorities dated 2021, CIPFA Treasury Management and the Public Services Code of Practice 2021. The borrowing strategy is that the Council borrows to fund capital expenditure, with borrowing driven by the requirements of the approved capital investment budget. The objective of the borrowing strategy is to manage the risk of current and potential future debt. The current loan debt comprises of £121.3 million and is fully detailed at Annex A. The objective of the investment strategy is to ensure prudence is applied and that risks are managed when the Council holds surplus funds, that is, incomes received in advance of expenditure. As at 31 October 2023, the Council has £78.9 million of investments spread across banks, other local authorities and money market funds. And again, the current investment portfolio is detailed at Annex A. And finally, the earmarked reserves at Appendix E show that taking into consideration the 2023-24 Q2 forecast outturn before management action showing an overspend of £13.8 million will see our reserve balance drop to £66.8 million. As I mentioned earlier, this Conservative-led administration will seek to grow that by adding £2.5 million to the balance of that during the financial year 24-25. In conclusion, and bearing in mind the context of the wider poor economic situation that surrounds us, I would like to propose to Cabinet that we have achieved a deliverable balanced budget of £210.5 million, that our medium-term financial strategy shows that we will be able to deliver balanced budgets over the 4-year period of this strategy, and finally, that we have strong reserves which will only begin to increase as we begin to pay surpluses back into them. This is a situation that many other local authorities would love to find themselves in. I therefore have no hesitation in recommending this draft budget and request that Cabinet approve all 10 recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. Thank you for giving us a detailed account of why we've got to where we've got to. So this is the proposed budget for Council to discuss and vote on in the next full Council meeting on the 9th of February. But Cabinet members, did you have any comments or points you wish to raise or clarification that you wanted to raise at this stage? Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Stoddart, for an excellent presentation of where we're at, and it's pleasing to hear that we are potentially in a place where other councils would live to be. As a result of the money that was awarded to this council only yesterday and the discussions that have followed overnight, to be able to allot some funding into the rights of way, the Lensman scheme, the drainage grant, to be used locally is a fantastic opportunity, and it gives our local people the opportunity to do stuff where they see issues that need to be done and don't know how to get it done under the current scenario. So I think it's fantastic that we're offering that sum of money to those 3 particular areas. Many other good things in it, but we do still challenge the officers to deliver on every aspect of this, because we really do need to settle our outstanding issues going forward so that we can then get down to operating good services for the residents. So if nobody else does, I would be more than happy to second Councillor Stoddart in due course.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Any more? Councillor Powell, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Stoddart. So my thanks to the Cabinet member for his work on the budget, and in particular to him and the Council officers who've invested considerable time in providing the confidence that the proposed investment in the Children's Services Department will see not only the improvements that we need to see to continue to improve the service, resulting importantly in the improved outcomes for our children and families, but also will also deliver the savings that we have projected from the year 24-25 through the next 3 years. So the budget as proposed, in particular from my perspective as the Cabinet member, has my confidence, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Councillor Biggs, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, also I'd like to echo the thanks to Councillor Stoddart and the officers for all the work that's gone into it. But not only that, I mean, the Cabinet, we've spent some time, we've deliberated, and we've looked at these things and tried to deliver a budget and support Councillor Stoddart in getting that budget together. But in fairness to the rest of Council, we've had some really valuable comments at full Council. We've had lots of debate through. We've had scrutiny that have fed back in as well. Has been really positive. I think the communication we've had across the we've almost depoliticised most of this budget for me. And I think that's the really positive thing, is if we can get a budget that everybody at full council ends up saying, you know, we can all get behind, then it's a real achievement for all of us, not just this cabinet, but I think the full council can be proud of that.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and it's been a really useful process to get to the heart of what concerns many councillors. Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you, Leader. I too like to associate myself with the comments just made by Councillor Biggs. I think you know, we have worked really hard. I think the Scrutiny Committees have done an excellent job. Councillor Stoddart has done an incredible job, as have his team, trying to get it right, trying to get the balance right. You know, the circumstances are really hard for us, but you know, we try and take on board everyone's points of view and offer our best efforts to the full council, and hope the full council can get in behind that. I'm personally really pleased to see the what Councillor Price has picked up on, the recognition of the incredible contribution made by parish councils to the quality of the local environment for residents. Also really pleased with the ambition to make sure that every footpath that is closed due to a lack of investment gets reopened. Access to our countryside, to open air, to nature is incredibly important for everyone's health and well-being. So I'm very supportive of that. So again, thank you again, Councillor Stoddart, for your very hard work here. Thanks.
Thank you. At this stage, any more council? Well, we obviously have the recommendations from the scrutiny meeting, the 7 recommendations. Some of those recommendations are for information, so we need to consider providing that information for full council. I take it the Cabinet's all agreed with that, providing that information? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So at this point, the Cabinet will pause for breath while we go to group leaders to hear the views of group leaders. Unfortunately, Councillor Owens has not arrived yet, so we'll go to all other group leaders. So Councillor Chowns first.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart, for your comprehensive introduction of your paper there. And I echo the thanks that's been given to everybody who's worked on this process from all directions, and particularly those in the community that have contributed to the community consultation. I want to pick up particularly on the welcome news that government has, surprise, surprise, found a little bit of extra money down the back of the sofa 7 days before our full budget meeting. I think, while this is clearly welcome, I think Herefordshire residents will see this for what it is. It's political theatre. And this is honestly no way to run a country, with this drip of bits of funding in the context of a long-term, desperate erosion of the funding for public services. Let's remind ourselves of the context here. The Conservatives have slashed funding for local councils repeatedly since 2010, and our Conservative MPs have repeatedly voted for those cuts. So they offer a few crumbs here and there, like the extra few million that have been talked about today, but the reality is that's a few crumbs back in the context of half of the loaf having already been taken away. And they're expecting residents to be grateful. Let's just remember the context. These papers in front of us today point out that it would cost £43 million just to keep services going at the same level next year as they were last year because of cost pressures. That's increases in demand, it's inflation going through the roof. That's largely what it is. It would cost £43 million to keep going the same next year as we have been in the last year. And yet, what we've had to do is find £20 million of cuts. And now we get an extra few £1 million to address some of the unpopular cuts that would have been necessary. But it is a drop in the ocean in the context of years, more than a decade, of the undermining and the underfunding of public services. And I've spoken to a lot of residents in recent months. Residents are fed up of this, fed up of the underfunding and the erosion of our public services. And so Councillor Stoddart and Councillor Lester, I'd like to ask you, will you join me in condemning the Conservative government's repeated real terms cuts to funding for local government? And will you join me in condemning the Conservatives' repeated refusal to give a multi-year funding settlement to local authorities to enable us to plan long term?
Thank you, Councillor Chowns. Other group leaders? Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As I said to you before, I've just got half a dozen questions apart from a few comments to start with, which I ask the Cabinet members take note and they can answer them at the end. First of all, I refer to page 13, item 15. I made it abundantly clear, colleagues, at the last Cabinet meeting I was very perturbed about your proposed increase in car parking charges. And in fact, I put down a motion supported by Councillor James, which is still on the agenda, to go to full council. It will remain there, just in case you have a change of mind once again. but I welcome that because, and also, I didn't have to wait for the public response to know how the public and businesses felt before. I've been well aware of that for some time. So I welcome that, and as I say, we'll be closely monitoring where we go from there. Just a few questions to clarify issues because we can say more detail on the 9th of February. Community well-being, I'd like to know, please, what percentage of people, elderly people, fund their own care? Because that was quite high one time, and I'd just like to know what that is. The other thing is, with asylum seekers moving from the Talbot and the Three Counties Hotel, which they've settled in and we've taken care of them, but they're moving on now in the next few months. I could ask the Cabinet member or Darrell to say if there's any impact in any way on the pressure or otherwise, whatever it is that will make any difference there. The other thing is, Councillor Price, you know, and you can be rest assured that we're being watched today because we're watched by the people from Crednill. They watch this meeting regularly. They're on the phone to me on the evening, that's why I know. The fact that the school transport services, I know budgets are under a lot of pressure, but I'm hoping that the extra money we'll have, just to put colleagues in the picture, parents at Crednill with 3 children are paying $1,800 to transport their children from Crednill to Webley. 70 of them go there. They're the backbone of Webley School, which is a first-class school with excellent results. White Cross is their nearest school, but there's no room there. It's been filled to capacity for some time. So I asked Councillor Price to just note, and with some extra money coming in, I hope he can address that unacceptable issue. The other thing is on the economy and the environment. I did mention briefly to Councillor Biggs. I understand there's some extra staff being put on the employment and economy side. That's fine, but they're quite expensive jobs, I understand. I may have been misinformed, but that's my understanding. With respect, businesses don't want too many officers falling around their feet. What they want, in other words, give them the tools and they'll do the job. And what they're crying out for is the A49 to be greatly upgraded down to the motorway at Ross-on-Wye. That's what they want to do, is get down to the motorway. They don't want to drive 80 miles up a substandard A-class road before they hit any sort of motorway network. They want to get out and get out quick and get on with their lives. Give them the tools, they'll do the businesses, they'll bring in the new jobs and increase and improve our economy. So if I could have some sort of answer to that. And then when we go to value for money, Leader, you won't mind me saying this, but there were some flaws in the system. As you know, when you were in government before, in administration before. So value for money, I respectfully suggest a far closer monitoring of our contractors and consultants, etc. Because if we're going to create a lean and resilient council, it can't all be done from staffing, etc. It's got to be done throughout the council. And I think that because we've got to be very careful if we get get it wrong, we'll have more problems than we resolve. Bear with me, folks. I said only a couple more questions. I'll leave you in peace if I can find them. Oh, dear. Now, UPL, I welcome the proposals on UPL because when UPL was brought into being, we were clearly led to believe that we'd have a very efficient service from them, which costs. I don't say that they're not doing a reasonable job, but I honestly feel that what you're proposing here is extremely welcomed to address the issue of staffing, etc., and I welcome that. The other scheme is the resignation scheme, which I raised again at the last meeting, a voluntary resignation scheme. We've got to be very sensitive and careful how we handle that, because otherwise it could cause more harm than good. So I'm sorry to have so many questions, but you shouldn't have so many papers to try and compare a report from. So if I could have those answered, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. But before we consider the points that you've raised, I'll go to Councillor Harvey. I presume you wanted to speak at this item?
Yes, thanks, Leader. I mean, I wasn't in the room to use up the oxygen on the scrutiny item, but I'll just say one or two points. First of all, I welcome, as we all do, any extra money coming in. I would have welcomed there being a note passed round about what the proposals were, rather than hearing them on the fly in the room. My pen ran out of ink, so I wasn't able to jot all of the good news down. So I hope we've got something that can be projected to say what the extra recommendations are going to be. Good that there's an opportunity to put a bit of funding towards bolstering the economic development team. Economy and environment is one of the areas of the council that is perpetually having to tighten its belt in order to deliver savings because of the statutory services in our other two directorates. And growing our economy is hugely important. The economy team does a lot of excellent work in bringing in grants and helping businesses, and punches above its weight. And so any additional support there is to be welcomed, as is continuing the level of funding for the Lensman scheme, which given that we've reintroduced a level of matched funding for that, parishes really do appreciate it. It does make a difference, and it does make it easier for them to argue making their own contributions to the work of the Lensman, to their own residents. And the closer that we work with our parishes, I think the better it's going to be. I think there's still work to be done, and there's still progress to be made in sharing some of the services that get delivered, in order to make sure that people get what they need and what they value in the different areas of the county. It's not all the same, and working with our parishes is a really important thing. That great, there it is. Thank you very much. That's working with our parishes. We can always do better. I think we've done better in recent years, but I'm sure there's more that we can do. I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to the sterling work that Councillor Phillips does and continues to do, both on the rural services body and also behind the scenes in advocating for additional funding for Herefordshire, but for all rural councils. He beavers away and makes stuff happen, and does it with with real passion. So it's good to hear that we've got a bit of extra money coming in from the Rural Services Grant. I note the comments from Councillor Stoddart, a few little brickbats there about a big gap in the NTFS that we were flagging last year. But you know jolly fine that it's only been plugged because the legislation has been enacted on double council tax for second homes, which we enabled through announcing and getting council to back last year that we would actually implement that if government brought that into legislation. And without that, you have a £20 million gap in your MTFS. So, you know, I expect you to joust a little bit, but make sure that, you know, you can properly take the credit. It's just luck and good fortune that there's another little income stream coming along. Crumbs, as Councillor Chams refers to them. Yeah, you know, local government's lost a lot of money. I'll be interested to see if you guys decide to condemn the damage that's been done to local government through starvation of its funding over the last 12 years. But the reality is, you know, that we all know what the problem is. We all know it's not going to be fixed under a sort of a policy of austerity and increasing local taxation by the very many different ways in which the government has done that. You know, I really would like some confirmation in comments that come from cabinet members as to where in the paperwork we can see the funding being allocated, as we made plain last year, of the additional support to the hardest hit households. Council tax reduction scheme is one thing, but families need support in more and different ways than just a let off on their council tax. Not everybody qualifies for that, and the kind of support that £1.7 million that we targeted to the most hard up households, you know, really does make a difference. And I hope you have been spending it this year and investing it in commissioning services and support for community-led action. But I'd like to know where it appears in the figures before you today, and if it doesn't, if it's squirreled away somewhere, that it is brought to the surface and that you take that recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee into account. I think, you know, we'll mull over the additional monies and where you're proposing to put them, and come back, no doubt, with more to say when it comes to debating this at full house. But thank you for the opportunity to say something today.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. The last point, was that with reference to recommendation 2?
Of the Scrutiny Committee?
Yes.
I don't remember which number it is, but it's the one about making it clear where the additional sort of hardship support funding is being made available. We made it overt in the budget documentation last year. There was about 800k from New Homes Bonus, and then we said that we'd allocate the about 1.5, I think, 1.3 from the additional interest that would come from higher interest rate on our investments.
Okay, I will seek clarification that that it is recommendation 2. Can I just note that the line wasn't as crisp as it perhaps should have been, so I'm not sure whether that's your technology or the link. I don't know if not to get rid of you, Councillor Harvey, but maybe if you went out and come back in again, maybe that might fix the glitch. I'm not sure. Councillor Harvey, sorry. No, she's trying to come. Yeah, okay. Just pause for a second. Yes, for the Cabinet, that was recommendation 2. Hopefully we can get Councillor Harvey back pronto. Just pause for a second. Right, you're back in the room, Councillor Harvey. Can we just check that you can hear and see us?
I can hear and see you.
That's much better. You're coming through much better. So perhaps you've got to keep your video on, I'm afraid.
Well, I was going to suggest that maybe the next thing to do was for me to turn my camera off. I know that there'd be cries of no, don't do it.
No. But then you're coming through. You're coming through loud and clear. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming back. Okay, right. Right. Well, thank you to group leaders for all of their comments, and that's all of those comments have been made with regard to the proposal in front of us. Councillor Chowns made comments about government funding. Oh, Councillor Gandhi.
Yes, Councillor Matthews asked how many people were self-funders, and just to clarify that for him, it's between about 65 and 70%.
65 between. Sorry. Could you speak into the microphone, Carol?
Nobody's ever said that to me before. 65 and 70% are self-pay the full funding themselves. There are others that pay part.
There you go, Councillor Matthews. Yes, in view of Councillor Chan's comments, yes, local government funding is tight, and the government has lots of responsibilities and lots of expenditure to make sure that this country is running as it should. But local government must also look to itself to make sure that it's well funded and it is using best use of its resources. But we really welcome, as an administration, the extra monies that have been provided, and we think that this council can make very good use of that money. So I welcome that extra investment in local government. Councillor Matthews has given us quite a few questions to chew on. So we've had the answer to one of those. There was a query about the fact that there are the asylum seekers that are being not using some of the buildings in Herefordshire. So, Councillor Powell, if you could tell Cabinet and all those concerned what the impact that has on their budget.
Thank you. I'll seek to answer the question, but just provide a broad overview first, if I could, please. So, as a council, we're required to accommodate the equivalent of 0.1% of our local child population under what's known as the National Transfer Scheme. So in Herefordshire, we've always sought to meet that level of need and to support that, and for us that's the equivalent of 36 children. Plus additionally, the Home Office accommodate families currently at the Talbot Hotel in Leominster, and obviously those families include children. To be clear, those children are not unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and all of those families will collectively be relocated by the Home Office when the Talbot Hotel closes at the end of February 24. That is the Home Office who conduct all of that. The Home Office also commissioned the Three Counties Hotel to accommodate single adult male asylum seekers. And as part of that process, what occasionally happens is an individual will come forward and identify that in fact they are a person under the age of 18 years. Thank you. And we then obviously have a duty as a local authority to accommodate them as unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Three Counties is also closing, but that will be at the end of March 2023. Just to identify that in terms of, my apologies, March 2024. And just to point out that we do receive some government funding for those that we are required to accommodate under the National Transfer Scheme. So currently, in terms of the profile of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, we have 38 children, and in addition, we also have 71 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who have now reached the age of 18 years, and we continue to support them, of course, as care leavers. And with the way things are, those numbers, of course, we would anticipate increasing. That answering the question Cabinet has posed. But in conclusion, I would just like to place on record in particular, thanks to the schools in Leominster who've worked really hard and flexibly to support unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and their families, and to other services there, and indeed, importantly, to the people and communities of Leominster in this particular regard.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Councillor Matthews, you mentioned that you welcome the refined workings of Hoople and how we're going to reduce costs there, and you welcome that, and we welcome that too. And you make a point about the MERS scheme that's proposed, and we note your plea about that being sensitively done, and also there is recommendation 4 of the recommendations that is proposing that monitoring of this performance of this implementation is undertaken. So please bear that in mind. And then monitoring of contracts. Councillor Stoddard, you picked up on the fact that there is close monitoring of council spending. Did you not?
Thank you. Yes, we'll Cabinet portfolio members will be actually conducting their monthly review of all expenditure. As I explained earlier, the £500 moratorium is in place. That will continue into next year as well.
And Councillor Matthews, you posed a question for Councillor Price about the school transport, and I take it that's a result of the council's school transport policy. And so we will, if there's an issue there that you'd like to raise with us, outside this meeting, that we can take that up. But Councillor Price.
Yes, I thank Councillor Matthews for his little bear trap, as he always tries to lay for me, and I welcome the residents of Credenhill. If they're all watching, welcome to Cabinet, and I'm sure you will email me with what I'm going to say. The issue over the school transport is quite serious for Credenhill, as it is for many other people. I have got 4 current scenarios on my emails at this moment in time along the same lines which we are dealing with. And on the other point, it wasn't really a question that you asked, it was for me to note, which I have noted, but I will answer it now and here and now. You made a point of sorting out the A49. I can tell you that that will be coming to Cabinet in February, and guess what? It's probably a bypass, which you will love, especially if it's chosen to go to the west. So there we go. I will keep you up to date on it as the time goes by, when I have something further to add.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, lots of comments were made, helpful comments made during the scrutiny presentation, but there was talk about the MTFS and closing the gap. Cabinet members content that closing the gap has been achieved by lots of hard work and savings.
Very much so. It reflects the hard work of everybody in the room, in the Cabinet, and also all the work from our council officers, and also the consultations we've been having with council colleagues and others.
And Councillor Stoddard, would you agree that what is key to this budget is setting the financial stability for the next several years, and that is why so much focus and attention has been put on making sure that we have a financial plan proposed for this council for the foreseeable future?
Certainly, Lydia, thank you. Yes, I look forward to the fact that we can speak to our directors and actually look at this coming year, financial for 24-25, in 25-26, we will be saying to them we're not looking for savings, we're looking to live within our budgets as we have, and that will carry on for the next 3 years.
Okay, right. Well, I think we've discussed at this stage our proposed budget for full council enough. We've heard from scrutiny, opposition leaders, cabinet members, and as Councillor Biggs eloquently said, we really appreciate all of the feedback that we've received, not just from members, but from our communities, and a great consultation exercise. It could always be longer and get more response, but I think we've done lots of work to try and get the feedback that we need to make the proposal that we're proposing today. So it's going to be proposed by Councillor Stoddard, and we've got a seconder, which is Councillor Price. So go to the vote. All in favour? Thank you. Right, so we now go to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 8, which is the 2024-25 capital investment budget and capital strategy update. And the agenda item is to recommend to Council for approval the revised capital investment budget and strategy for 2024-25 onwards. The agenda item appears on page 109 of the agenda pack, and without further ado, I'll go straight back to Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you, Leader. The capital programme reflects capital investment which generates benefit to the county for a period in excess of 1 year. Since the full council meeting on the 8th of December, at which the current capital programme, which is included in this report as the base capital programme, there has been one further addition. This is a grant from the Department for Transport in respect to an additional £3.66 million over a 2-year period to address potholes. As it was too late to commission the works and spend the £1.83 million in this financial year of 23-24, it will be done as one programme of works in financial year 24-25. The proposed additions at Appendix A total £7.63 million, with the appropriate outlined strategic business cases at Appendix E. This will be financed from prudential borrowing funded by the corporate revenue budget. Para 8 of the report clarifies that the approved current capital budgets of £0.2 million in support of the lift replacement and £0.2 million for the mezzanine floor aspects of the new museum project have been moved to increase the £18 million Stronger Towns Fund Hereford Museum and Art Gallery redevelopment to £18.4 million. I would like to emphasise that inclusion of a project in the capital programme is not, I repeat, not approval to proceed, and that each project will be subject to its own governance. A full business case will be presented for approval where required and in full compliance with the Council's contract procedures and rules as applicable. Para 18 of the report provides further details of the additional projects and shows that under community there are 2 projects: schools accessibility at £1.5 million and children's residential homes for 11 to 18-year-olds at £424,000. Under economy resources, there are 5 projects, and listening to the question raised at Scrutiny Management, we'd like to provide a bit more detail on these. So the planning and regulatory software for the planning department is at £1.396 million. The estate's building improvement programme, which includes the black and white museum, the Ryfield site and decarbonisation of various other buildings, is costed at £2.765 million. Building works from 2022 condition surveys at various sites across the county, including Churchill House, Maylord Orchard Car Park and Ledbury Library, are costed at £745,000. A VM host replacement, so that's some IT hardware, at £247.5k. And finally, property improvements in the care homes operated by Hoople at Mallards in Leominster, South Bank Close and Hillside in Hereford at £550,000. The capital strategy, which forms Appendix D of this report, has been developed in accordance with the SIPFA guidelines. The purpose of the capital strategy is to give a clear and concise view of how Herefordshire Council determines its priorities for capital investment, decides how much it can afford to borrow, and sets its risk appetite. In line with these guidelines, it will require council approval. This will be updated in line with the County Plan 2024-28 that is currently being developed. The capital investment proposals will support the County Plan and the associated delivery plan. The overall aim of capital expenditure is to benefit the community through improved facilities and promoting economic growth. A specific community impact assessment, including any health and safety implications or corporate parenting responsibilities, will be included in the decision report for any new capital scheme commencing and incurring spend. Whilst this budget setting document will not detail specific environmental impacts, consideration will always be made in minimising waste and resources in line with the Council's environmental policy. In conclusion, I fully endorse this report and propose that its two recommendations be approved by Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. And Cabinet members, have any comments that you wish to make at this stage? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to group leaders. Councillor Chowns.
Thank you. Councillor Stoddart, I asked you a question at the Scrutiny Management Board last week around the ratio of financing cost to net revenue stream. Are you able to answer that question now? Would you like me to remind you of it? Shall I briefly remind you?
This isn't, you raised it at scrutiny, but this is not a scrutiny meeting, Councillor Chowns. So if you make your points, and then we'll take on board your comments.
Okay, my point is very simple. It's that this administration, because it intends to borrow at a time of high interest rates, we're looking as a council at the prospect of the cost, the amount of money that we're spending on interest, going from 13 million last year up to 19.5 million 3 years later, increasing from 7 to 9% of our net revenue stream. So more and more of our revenue budget will be spent servicing borrowing for capital projects, which is going to place more and more financial pressure on council taxpayers in future years. How can that be a wise strategy to be borrowing more and more at a time of increasing interest rates?
Okay. Any more comments, Councillor Chance? No. Okay. Other group leaders? Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, I've got a few points to raise, Leader. Under risk management, for all capital projects, monthly budget control meetings give assurance on the robustness of budget, blah, 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 blah. Now, as a result of me approaching external auditors, I put that policy in place some years ago. Because you know, Leader, that when you were administration the year before, there were serious flaws in how the finances were being managed. So that scheme is in place now, which I think is doing a good job and moving us forward. I've discussed these capital issues with Councillor James, and I can assure you that him and I will be working very closely together to make sure that we get the value for money and the right policies that are right for the growth and of our local business in this county. And as I said before, you have not got an overall majority, so you've got to bring forward some sensible value for money policies, otherwise you're going to have a lot of problems, I can assure you. Because I've spoken to him and his colleagues, and as I said, like, we'll be monitoring the situation very, very closely. I've got nothing further to say at this point, because as I said to you before, like, you know, I could also go with Blue Schoolhouse. It was yours truly that discovered the great overspend there and brought it into the public domain. And so I did a lot of work to highlight the weaknesses and flaws when you were there before. So as I said, you'll be closely monitored during this process, particularly on the capital programme. To be perfectly honest, Leader, there's quite a bit in there that I'm extremely unhappy with. So we'll have to see how it goes, and we'll have to put our case and the support of the, as I said, I've spoken to Councillor James and others. We'll have to see where we go, but it's imperative that we get the right policies which are right for this county to get this county moving, because it's been stagnating for years. and as I say, that a lot of the policies that you're bringing up now are well-trodden paths that you went down many years ago, then you didn't achieve a lot. So I believe it needs some fresh thinking and some cooperation if we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I think, you know, from my group's perspective, I think the main concern that we have is around, I suppose it's a bit of a governance issue to do with whether the road programmes that were reinserted into the capital programme are actually part of our policy framework at the moment, because full council actually voted in 2022 to cease pursuing them, and there's been no vote of full council to reverse that decision. So I just flag that for Cabinet and for the public now. The monitoring officer has said that the only reason that the programme can be reinserted is because it has an approved route. However, if it's fallen without our policy framework now as a consequence of a full council decision, I think that's probably not the primary factor to be concerned about. I will be taking this up through audit and governance and further afield if necessary. But I'd just like to register that as a group concern that we have, especially seeing as you're planning on proceeding to spend an awful lot of money pursuing something that you made very little progress in delivering when you actually had some funding to aim for, and currently there's no source of funding that you can aim for on this. So we do have concerns from a governance point of view.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you for all those comments, group leaders, but the issue of borrowing came up at the last scrutiny meeting, and I recall Mr Lovegrove saying that historically this council has lower levels of borrowing than other authorities, and the fact of the matter remains, when a council wants to achieve certain goals and it cannot rely entirely on its revenue budget, then there is borrowing and grants and all kinds of financial mechanisms to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. But the plain matter is that if we want to get things done, that there are some times when a council has to borrow money, and so long as it borrows that within the ratios that the finance team are happy with, then that is a confirmed strategy of making sure that things do get done. And I can think of the administrations that I've been involved in where lots of projects have been done to transform the city and the market and build a link road and all of those things that are really important for this council to actually make sure that we're progressing Herefordshire's future. Councillor Matthews, I'm not entirely sure what your comments were with regard to policies, but I think what is really encouraging is, I would say, that making sure that this council follows best value for money and gets best outcomes, I think is incumbent upon all councillors, and so I welcome any help that you have to give to ensure that this council is making best use of its funds. And I think it's we have many councillors who have that concern, and I think it's right that you raise that, and that all councillors are focused on making sure that the council does achieve best value for money. With regard to allocation of capital with the Southern Link Road, it did have a route. It did have funding. That funding was given away by the last administration because they didn't want to see it through. But it was an important vote on the 8th of December, which decided that this council was going to allocate funding to make sure that the Southern Link Road is progressed again. So there was no resolution in terms of cancelling anything, but there was certainly a resolution to allocate monies to a project that the majority of councillors obviously were in a position to support. Okay, so thank you for those comments. Cabinet, do you have any further comments to make? If not, we have a proposal for the capital investment budget and strategy so that we can put that to full council on the 9th. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Durkin, thank you very much. And so, Cabinet, all in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous. So we now go on to agenda item 9, which is the council tax reduction scheme, to recommend to full council that the 2024-25 local council reduction scheme is implemented, and details of this item are on page 157. And once again, Councillor Stoddard, it's back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Council tax charges can be reduced if the bill payer meets certain set criteria contained in the council tax reduction scheme, which is available to working age and pensioner claimants. The pensioner council tax reduction scheme is set nationally. However, the working age council tax reduction scheme is set locally by ourselves as Herefordshire Council. Currently, more than 11,000 bill payers in Herefordshire are currently in receipt of council tax reduction, with over 6,000 claims from working age applicants. The existing local working age scheme was approved by Council in February 2023 and is included in the document in front of you at Appendix 1, with the maximum discount maintained in 2023-24 to mirror those available to pensioner cases. This means that a 100% discount is awarded under the council tax reduction scheme unless their income breaches the threshold, irrespective of the council tax band that the property falls into. As I mentioned earlier today, this Conservative-led administration listens to members of the public, and during the recent public consultation events in respect to the revenue budget, it was made clear by members of the public that continuing support for those that struggle to pay their council tax had their overwhelming support. Subsequently, and following the example of the previous administration, and as I confirmed to the Scrutiny Management Board on the 16th of January, we have brought forward this report to continue to provide this vital support to those individuals who require it. I'm therefore very pleased to endorse this report and propose its recommendation is approved by Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. Do we have any Cabinet members who wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, thank you. Group leaders? Councillor Chowns?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see that the extended council tax reduction scheme, which was introduced, as Councillor Stoddart acknowledged, by the previous independent Green administration, has been retained.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews?
Thank you, Leader. Just one issue I'd like to raise on page 163. Duty to notify changes of circumstances. We support the policy and the recommendations, but could Mr. Lovegrove or somebody tell us when there's changes of circumstances, in his experience, do people inform us, or do they just carry on as usual?
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments, Councillor Matthews?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Harvey?
Nothing from me. Very happy that you're carrying on with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Right, so duty to inform, there's a query there. Seek clarification, or should we provide a written answer later?
Well, Leader, I'm happy to update you that people, by and large, do tell us their circumstances have changed. People are very diligent, I think, in that respect. There are one or two maybe forget, but the majority of people are very good at telling us when their circumstances have changed.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that clarification. So yes, as all group leaders have said, we're very pleased to continue this scheme, and so it's proposed by Councillor Stoddard. I'd like to second that. All in favour? Excellent, thank you. moving swiftly on to agenda item 10, which is the, oh, sorry, I should say that concludes the budget proposals that we wish to bring forward to the meeting on the 9th of February. But lastly, there's the matter of the procurement of the new waste collection service update. Further to the approval of Cabinet's report on the recommendation on the 5th of October, this report seeks to award the new waste collection contract. The item begins on page 11 of the first supplementary pack. Sorry? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, okay. So someone's popped out for a convenience break. So we'll just pause the meeting for a minute. Okay, so yeah, Councillor Brahim is going to take the item, but had to pop out for a comfort break. So, okay, so yes, so just to recap, the item begins on page 11 of the first supplement pack. The political group consultation took place on the 23rd of January and was published as a second supplement on the agenda pack of on the 24th of January. So if we can go over to Councillor Bramer to introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader, and my apologies to keeping the meeting waiting. I'd assumed that the previous item, which took 68 pages in the literature, would have taken a little longer to go through. Anyway, following the Cabinet decision on October 23, which approved the phased introduction of a new waste collection model, the procurement process of the new waste collection contract is now nearing completion. The report proposes to delegate authority so that on completion of the procurement process, the new contract can be awarded on the current collection model. The new contract includes options and flexibility for the Council to phase the introduction of the new collection model, each element of which will be subject to a business case and a subsequent decision. The report also includes proposed delegations to approve the required capital expenditure for the collection model, to approve the required expenditure for mobilisation, and to approve a short-term extension for the existing contract to align with the new contract commencement date. The new contract to commence on the 1st of September will be on the current collection model, and as such there will be no immediate changes for residents or businesses. The initial contract term is for 8 years, and the option is to extend by a further 12 years. The procurement process has been supported by the Council's legal and commercial services and informed by specialist legal advice from DWF Law, the specialised technical and procurement advice from WSP. The preferred bidder will be selected following the completion of the robust and competitive procurement process in line with the Council's contract procedure rules to ensure value for money. Within the procurement process, bidders have been asked to set out their proposals to deliver the environmental improvements to deliver the ambitious targets within the Council's integrated waste management strategy and to the Council's net zero target. This forms part of the evaluation. With regard to the introduction of the optional chargeable garden waste service, the Council is currently undertaking a public consultation. It's already received over 1,500 responses, which will be analysed to support the business case for a subsequent decision. With regard to the introduction of the weekly food waste service, whilst the Council has received an indicative capital funding allocation of £1.8 million, we are still waiting further confirmation of the government's waste reforms and confirmation of the required revenue funding through new burdens. I would say that this report contains all the necessary information necessary, and I would ask members of the Cabinet to support its recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bramer, and to all of those officers who've worked jolly hard on getting us to where we are now. So, Cabinet, any thoughts, queries or questions? This matter has been addressed in several meetings, so we're happy to proceed as follows. Sorry. Oh yes, Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, I too would like to record my thanks for the efforts and extremely hard work that's gone into this from Ben Boswell and Sean Peters and the team. Getting this over the line, it's really taken a lot of work, and all credit to them. I think that it struck me that these long contracts are very difficult to deal with, in a sense, because you have to future-proof everything. You have to look into things that will change, and it's the flexibility and the responsiveness of what we can build in that I think will make this a success. But that also has made it kind of quite tricky to do. So, but it's I'm confident that this does future-proof us with the changes, whatever the government may come up with, and when the funding comes through, and everything, that we will be able to continue to improve our service and really make it a gold standard.
Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst. Any further thoughts from Cabinet? If not, straight to group leaders. Councillor Harvey first, for a change.
Oh, thank you, Leader. Well, we'll welcome this report coming forward. Would appreciate it if the political group consultation was taken a little bit earlier than, within the week that the decision was going to be taken. But I commend officers for turning the report around, capturing the comments of the consultation that was held on, I think it was Tuesday. So well done for being really speedy on that and being able to get that released as a supplement. I think from Independence from Herefordshire's point of view, we're frustrated that other local authorities are already recycling a lot more waste streams than we're doing here in Herefordshire. It's a shame that we're having to go at the pace of the slowest, which is government again, in having to hold back our ambitions because of delays in the legislation and necessary new burdens funding being provided by central government to enable us to take this forward. It is unfortunate. I think in the meantime, given that we have a lot of supermarkets and other businesses that are associated with selling products which generate a waste stream, where they are providing options for members of the public to be able to recycle elements of their products back through those businesses. Maybe there's more we could do in terms of making information available to the public about where else they might go to be able to recycle soft plastics and foils and films, other sorts of recyclable products which we can't necessarily collect from the curbside right now. If we can't do it ourselves, it would be great if we could put a bit more effort into saying what is recyclable and where people might, and encouraging businesses maybe to tell us where, and make it easy for them to do that through our website, perhaps, just to increase communication and help people to do the right thing individually. So I think that's where we're at on this, and thank you very much for Ben and all the team for getting it to a point where we can press the go button on this as a contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Chance.
Thanks. The Green Group shares the concern just articulated by Councillor Harvey there about the stubbornly low recycling rates in Herefordshire, which have been stuck at around 40% for many, many years. And this is, particularly concerning in the context of the fact that a number of other local authorities, such as Green-led Stroud Council, have recycling rates around 65%. So it certainly is possible to drive up recycling rates, and, the previous proposals did aim to do that. So it's somewhat disappointing that this administration is essentially continuing with business as usual and awarding an 8-year or potentially a 20-year contract tying us into this model. I can't help wondering whether, they could try harder, might describe where we are with this. Reading the papers, there's text in there around there being a robust change mechanism. It's talked about para 13, I think, for updating the contract in the light of, new clarity from government, etc., etc., etc. But what really concerns me here is that we will be contractually tied into the provider already for many years at that point, as well as being given new obligations by government during the contract duration. Those new obligations are perfectly predictable and kind of knowable already. And so how can we have any confidence that we'll be able to get value for money from the provider through the change process? There's no time frame whatsoever articulated in the report for what's called the enhanced service, although there are all sorts of claims made in the report about projected improvements in recycling rates. So essentially we've got, what could be rather wishful thinking and not enough clarity about how that's actually going to be achieved. So I'd like to, ask 3 questions. First of all, what precisely is our current recycling rate and how is it going to be improved if you're not making any change to the waste collection approach for an undefined period of time? How can we increase recycling within, current system, given that other authorities do so much better? Number 2, what is the time frame for implementing what's so-called enhanced service? And number 3, what protection do we have against the risk of, effectively price gouging by whichever company we end up signed up to when we find ourselves caught between a contract and new legal obligations?
Thank you, Councillor Jones and Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, very briefly, the only thing that concerns me, the True Independents support the report in principle and thank officers and everyone for their hard work. The only thing that worries me is that we don't get too rigid and we get far more fly tipping. So that's something we've got to watch carefully because it's the country folk that suffer. So as long as that is carefully monitored, I fully support the report.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Okay, Councillor Bramer, you had your hand up, and Councillor Swinglehurst after you.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Firstly, I'd like to agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Matthews regarding the fly tipping scenario. We have to ensure that no matter how we handle the waste contract, that fly tipping is something that we try and remove from the county. With regard to Councillor Harvey's question, comments, I would say that the enhanced elements, why is it that we can't bring these forward? We are awaiting confirmation of the new burdens funding from government to fund enhanced services, and I'm afraid it is a crystal ball as far as when that will happen. Soft plastics, I believe, will be able to be collected from 2027, which is included as part of the government's waste reforms, and were announced in October last year. And we're currently waiting further details following consultations which took place during November and December that can be included within the new contract. That's all I wanted to say with regard to the recycling rates and so on. I'm sure the officers can answer those questions.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. So the Councillor Brown's right. The timetable changes is not really with us. It's with government. Their November sort of simpler recycling announcements is saying, I think, March 26th. as the last date, as it were. So they may come forward with the new burdens financing between now and then, and we have to be ready to go with that. The issue that's been mentioned about if we know a change is going to take place and we already have a contract, and then what will happen further down the line, that actually that change has already been built in. So we know what the benchmark is, and there will be an adjustment for that. So it can't just suddenly drop in. It will be part of this initial set up from this stage. I can't go into too much detail, but that's how I understand it, that it won't be, as you described, price gouging, because it's benchmarked now, and it will simply flow with the contract. The current recycling rate is 40 something, I don't know. Hopefully that Mr. Voss will be able to fill in the gap there. But one thing that I think is worth remembering, and again, this goes to sort of, you know, the length of time that we look at these things. I think it was 2014 when this council made the decision to invest in an energy from waste plant. So I was talking about food waste the other day. Our food waste does not go to landfill. It goes to energy from waste. So and that plant, I think, generates enough energy for 32,000 homes. So it's not going into landfill. It's going to make electricity, which isn't to say that we're not going to improve on that and do things differently. But all councils are not the same. They're not all doing the same thing at this point.
And lastly, I would just make the comment that to Cabinet that Councillor Harvey mentioned about being ambitious with how we can encourage households to recycle. And is there any information and signposting that we can include with our literature when we come to telling people when their recycling days are? I think those are issues that are really well made, and I think we should have that ambition to increase that information. So I think it's, as a Cabinet, that's something we should consider doing to see how we can best improve informing members of the public that and the recycling rate is 39.5 up to November, but that's in the context of Councillor Swinglehurst's point about making energy from waste, which is recycling in a sense. Circular economy, absolutely. Right, okay, so thank you for all those useful comments and observations. And so therefore we have the proposal before us. This is proposed by Councillor Bramer, seconded by Councillor Swinglehurst. All Cabinet in favour of that? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes agenda item 10. And so now it just remains for me to close the meeting, and I would like to thank everyone for attending and their contributions. The next meeting is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. on the 22nd of February. I will now formally close the meeting. All members of the public are requested to leave the building promptly. Please ensure that you have taken all of your possessions with you and return your visitor pass when you leave. So thank you everyone, safe journey home, and please can I now confirm that the live stream